Have you ever saved someone's life? How did it happen? I am a doctor. Even then I can count the number of times I can say I've saved someone's life on one hand with fingers left over. I was working at an athletics event. After a long-distance running event that was open entry, a person collapsed and stopped breathing. I worked with my team to stabilize them and transfer them to hospital. They needed support for their airway to keep breathing. Had they not had it, they would have asphyxiated and died. I met them with their spouse and 8-year child a few months later, actually on this day a few years ago. That was the biggest reward for me. The best feeling. I'd reply that doctors save lives every day with their diagnosis and the healing, before ailments escalate to something more serious. I have performed the abdominal thrust, wrongly called Heimlich, on a girl at a juvenile detention facility I used to work at. I also have performed it on my wife probably 5 to 7 times. She has medical issues that sometimes causes her to choke, so we have learned how to specifically cook several meals, and identify which ones that she refuses to eat when I am not home with her. Former lifeguard. You dumb kids drown, I save you. My favorite is the one girl who had a conversation with me that she didn't know how to swim but wanted to jump off the diving board anyway. I said no, get off the diving board. She jumped, I saved her life. You're welcome, dumb girl, wherever you are. A few times. I've worked in healthcare for about 20 years, so there's been some successful resuscitations, things like that. Stopped at a wreck and broke the window to reach the driver and apply pressure to a bad leg wound until paramedics took over. Prevented a bad drug interaction that could have been nasty. Performed Heimlich maneuver on a guy at a Japanese restaurant. The workers were too short to do it effectively, but I'm 6 feet 3 inches, so I got it dislodged. When you are doing my kind of work, it just happens with a fair amount of regularity. I'm very excited about this one. I hope to see an action one like someone protecting someone from a mugger or something, but I guess what I've seen so far is that being a decent person to people who you may not even think about can save lives. Just being the guy that says, hey, do you want to come along, can bring someone from dead to living just like that. My story is not epic, single-handed, or unusual, but like so many others, I wear a mask when I go out and stay at home as much as possible. I suppose that these days we can all help a little bit with saving someone's life. Not much of an effort, but I was sleeping at my friend's shitty basement and one of our other friends got way too drunk and I woke up to the sound of him choking on his vomit. Told the guy on the bottom bunk to tip him over and my ass went back to sleep. Did I really save his life though? Yes, but am I a hero? Yes. We get a call for an attempted suicide. Dude slit his wrist bad. When we got to him he was ghost white. Like a sheet of paper white. Put pressure on the wound. Kept him conscious until medics arrived. He survived. Thanked us once he recovered. Great work. I hope that person is in a better state now. One day in college, I was on my way to grab dinner with some friends and ran into another friend in the parking lot. I invited him to come with me and join us, and we proceeded to have a totally unremarkable dinner in this AF. Years later, post-graduation, we were hanging out one night getting a bit drunk and stoned, and he confessed to me that he was on his way to kill himself that night when I ran into him. My oh my. Good for him that you crossed his path. We just never know how we can make an impact in someone else's life. When I was probably about 12 or 13, I saved my 4-year brother's life. We were in Oregon for spring break as a family and were watching the ocean waves on the beach. Suddenly an enormous rogue wave came out of nowhere and it pushed us all the way up the beach and against the cliffs. As the water rushed out, I saw my brother tumbling in the surge, so I lunged and grabbed him with one arm and held on for dear life to a big rock with the other. My shoes, jacket and wallet along with other family members' belongings were all swept out to sea, but I still have a brother. Friend overdosed on heroin. I administered CPR before the paramedics arrived. They did not have to administer Narcan when they arrived, as she was breathing when they arrived. This needs to get to hot, or boiling, so I can save a life and have permission to make an awesome comment here, where I saved a bunch of Redditors from boiling web water. Single-handedly? Twice. Once on baby with RSV. The pulse ox kept going off. My co-worker just went in and shut it off. It went off again. I actually looked at baby in mom's arms and he had that whole I'm not breathing look. Snatched him out of mom's arms and started mouth to mouth on the crib until the co-team could get there. No ambu bag because out hospital had decided it was too expensive to put one of each size at the bedside. My gift RSV a week later. Second time was a guy who OD'd in the bathroom at Walmart. I just kept his airway open and best on his chest when he would quit breathing. Quite a few others as part of a team. ER especially. I was an EMT for a decade. Yes, I have saved many someone's life. CPR, people struck by cars, severed limbs, drug overdoses, machete attacks, allergic reactions, cardiac issues, impalements. The list literally goes on and on. Just the other day I thanked an EMT crew, told them EMTs are the biggest lifesavers ever. Thank you for your service. When I worked in the restaurant industry, I had to give the Heimlich more than I can count. People would repeatedly thank me and sometimes say you saved my life, but I always felt like all I did was help them throw up their giant steak bite in public. I guess it is all about perception. Not me, but my son. He got his lifeguard certification and started work at our local pool. On his very first shift he pulled a drowning kid out. I almost burst with pride. At 16 he accomplished something more important than anything I've done in my 50+ years. That was 3 years ago. He's done it twice more since then, yes. Well, not single-handedly, but with the help of my mother and my older brother. We found him hanging from the rafters, cut him down, performed chest compressions for 30 minutes, until the paramedics arrived. Not sure if the old lady would have wound up dead, but I did do the Heimlich maneuver on someone whose face was turning green. I had a good friend who was going through some very stressful times in his life. He began experiencing symptoms of severe anxiety, tension, headaches, feelings of dizziness, and lethargy. He went to the doctors, who prescribed him benzos. He wasn't doing good and I went over several times to his house and he seemed like he was losing it. I would call him periodically to check in from time to time to see how he was doing and try to calm him. One day I had felt like I had a need to call him right then and there. I called him and he answered crying. I asked how he was doing and he said not good. I went and picked him up, noticed an empty fifth of whiskey on his dresser. He had always been a heavy drinker and at that moment I realized that benzos and alcohol don't mix. I took him to the ER and he was admitted. He has a BAC of 0.36, indicating he was an alcoholic or he would be dead. From there we convinced him to take his SSRIs and go to rehab. On my way to drop him off at rehab he told me, "Hey man, you're a great friend. I just want you to know that if you hadn't showed up today, I was going to kill myself." That hit me hard. Wow, just wow. I don't know if this really fits. I needed a kidney. My cousin volunteered. During their testing of her they found a small mass they thought was just fat. It turned out to be cancer. Most kidney cancer apparently is not caught until it's too late because your other kidney takes on the work and you don't get symptoms. She was able to get it all removed and is now cancer-free, didn't even need chemo, just surgery. Anyway, she claims I saved her life. I claim she saved her own by being willing to donate. I love your story. I told my father he has to go see a doctor or I would force him. He was super tired all the time. Turns out he had cancer and his liver was about to fail. A few friends and I saved a tourist family from drowning while surfing on the island of Oahu. We had been surfing an outer reef on the south shore that was a good half-mile or so off the coast when we noticed a family paddling out on a kayak. A single-person kayak with a dad, younger daughter maybe 8 and a son maybe 12 on the nose and tail, and with an older teenage son paddling behind on a boogie board. They paddled directly into an area of the reef where 4/5 of a foot waves were crashing very fast and very powerfully onto pretty much dry reef. It took only seconds for us to see them go from paddling along in the kayak to seeing them all bobbing in the waves and the kayak 200 yards away, stuck on the reef. We quickly paddled across the channel as fast as we could. We then each gave one of the kids and the dad outboards and pulled them by our leashes far enough into the lagoon and they could walk. About 100 yards or so. I vividly remember the dad saying I'm not panicking over and over in a thick Russian accent and having to reassure him that he'd be okay but needs to focus on what we were doing. Just goes to show how dangerous the ocean is and how deadly it could have been for that family if we weren't there. This gave me so much anxiety reading it. Good for you for noticing and thinking/acting so quickly. People act so dumb in the ocean sometimes. It can be calming, beautiful and peaceful, but it can turn so quickly and be unforgiving. I talk to suicidal people on Omegle all the time and I try really hard to talk them out of it. Well, if sometime that worked, guess I saved a life? I'm sure you did, and this is certainly written in stone in your life feed. My dad and I were on vacation in Paris a couple years ago, walking by the river. There weren't that many people around, jet lag, we were up early, and this girl jogged by us with her dog off leash. A couple of ducks saw the dog coming about 30 feet ahead of us and went into the water. Dog goes in after ducks. Girl goes in after dog. Because it was the Seine in the middle of Paris and the banks are all paved and, apparently, steep, neither of them could get up on their own right. We pulled them both out, one after the other, and then this husky the size of a dire wolf had the nerve to shake off all over us. Probably they would have figured it out if we hadn't been there, or someone else would have heard the yelling in time to help them. Still, it's a fun story. Leash your dogs, kids. Was eating dinner with my kid. I think she was maybe 4 at the time. She started choking. I quickly shot my hand into her abdomen up and in mimicking a Heimlich. Whatever it was she was eating came flying out of her mouth. Once she was good, the stress got me, and I went and cried in the bathroom for a couple minutes. Whoa, that's scary. At least 2 people from ODs and my 3-year-old sister from the bottom of a hotel pool because my sunbathing parents were both sleeping in the sun. I was only 10 or 11. Heroin overdoses where I had to administer CPR till the EMTs arrived. I worked in a med lab. My job was to go over the doctor's orders and make sure everything was correct. They missed a potassium test, so I ran and got that ordered. Turned out to be lethally high. Tech called the doctor at 2 in the morning. Doc got the patient to the hospital. Well played. One day at Central Station in Sydney, I noticed a drunk old bloke near the edge of the platform. When I saw a train coming, my gut told me he was going to fall on the tracks, so I walked up near him just in case. Sure enough, he stumbled a few steps and was about to fall on the tracks when I grabbed his shirt and pulled him back when the train was about 20 meters away. Then I took a bite of my Mars bar, trying to be all nonchalant, but my heart was beating 1,000 miles an hour. An old lady walked up to me and said, "I think you saved that poor man's life." I shrugged and gave a self-effacing smile, but the voice inside my head was saying, "Fuck yeah, I saved his life. Make me a cape, old lady," while I put my underpants over my pants, because that's the most superhero shit you're gonna see all day. Way to be observant. You saved a family of heartache. When I was in middle school, my dad took me to one of his friend's barbecues. His friend had a young son that I think was 4 or 5 at the time. Everyone had been swimming in the pool and went in the yard to go eat. No one saw the little kid run back to the pool except for me. Before I could say anything, he jumped in without his swimmies. I ran as fast as I could to him as he thrashed in the water, and I pulled him out. His parents were absolutely shocked and terrified. They didn't think he would do anything like that. Thankfully he ended up being fine, and it scared him out of doing it again. Always watch your kids if you have a pool. Even if you think they know better, they probably don't. Was in the middle of a neighborhood pool and watched a toddler at the side of the pool, 10 feet and, take his floats off and then jump in the water. He curled up like a ball and began to sink quickly. I was able to reach him before he reached the bottom. He was scared but screaming. The babysitter was on her phone. That is my nightmare. Thank you on behalf of his parents.